firstly, we want to acknowledge a lot of what Sabella has said earlier, that conservation has at times historically had a colonial legacy and has alienated communities, particularly the access to resources, right? So in the marine space, I mean, that's something that we can speak of in the team. We know that MPAs have alienated rural communities, have cut off a lot of the access to their livelihoods. That's the legacy of the sector. The WWF SASSI process has become inaccessible to small-scale fishers. So I'm not sure how aware you guys are of SASSI, so quick run through. It's the Southern African Sustainable Seafood Initiative, and it basically classifies the ecological sustainability of different species according to green, orange, and red. Green being the most sustainable, and red meaning we are concerned with the sustainability of that species. So historically, this is a process that has been participatory, but predominantly with the larger operators and large-scale guys. So when we declare a species a certain color, we send it out for comment, generally over email with a 60-day comment period, but we understand that that's a process that has largely excluded small-scale fishers today. And then our market transformation model has generally focused on the bigger players in the supply chain. I mean, we use our model saying that it's a lack of capacity from our side, but we focus on the supply chain, particularly the retailer space, where there's about 4 or 5 major retailers, and we know it's concentrated, quite concentrated in that space. So we try and drive change in that space to ensure that it pushes back up to the fisheries end of the value chain. So we understand again that sort of the value that we as WWF have offered traditionally has been to the larger operators because of the model that we've adopted. Okay, so we're starting to see a shift away from this model within WWF, and that's begun with our work in small-scale fisheries in about 2012, 2013 in the Kogelberg area. Right, so in light of what we saw on the previous slide, we see that WWF is now beginning to engage with the small-scale sector. We do understand, as Joseph has indicated earlier, that it is a major sector. The use of resources within the sector is also quite significant, and therefore, from a conservation perspective, in order to ensure the sustainable utilization of the resources, it's crucial that we do engage with the small-scale sector. So we chose Kogelberg as our first pilot as WWF, and the reason there is because we saw high unemployment, so quite consistent with national statistics, where about 30% of adults are unemployed, 20% of youth are unemployed. There's a lack of livelihood options, so predominantly dependent on the marine resources for their livelihoods. We found that fishers themselves are earning barely 1,000 rand a month, 12,000 a year. Often that's all accumulated in like a few months of the rock lobster season in our case study, and then fishers are indebted to the bigger marketers for the rest of the year. The status of the marine resource from a conservation perspective is also one that we identified here. So species like West Coast rock lobster, these fishes are quite dependent on that, and that's a species that's sitting at under 2% of pristine now, and with current trends could be commercially extinct within 5 to 10 years if we continue as we are. So we identified the need to try and ensure that there's a longevity to the resource for everyone, I guess. IUU fishing is also quite prevalent in this area, and it actually undermines the livelihoods of responsible small-scale fishers, all fishers in fact. And then climate change impacts, right? So we've heard from fishers how they're seeing that there's choppier waters, changing fish distributions, changing water temperatures, and all of this means that it's becoming more expensive for them to fish. They've got to stay out longer to catch what they would normally have caught quite easily in the past. And then lastly, within our case study, hunger and food insecurity continues to be an issue. About 15 to 20% have limited access to healthy food, and in our study we found that households skip at least one meal every week. Right, so the approach adopted in 2013 was predominantly aimed at how to make the fishery more sustainable. So the engagement was focused with fishers in the area. We benchmarked a couple of species, abalone, rock lobster, tuna, and snook, against the Marine Stewardship Council standard, right? So that's still seen as the gold standard internationally for ecological sustainability. And we also benchmarked it against the fair trade principles, right, to look at some of the social issues that have come up in the supply chain. And based on that, we came up with 7 major projects which we sought to then implement between about 2013 to about 2016, 2017. So I'm just going to run through them briefly. So the first project was looking at restaurant value chain and getting fishers access to more lucrative markets. So that's something that Joseph also spoke of. At the moment, fishers are pretty much price takers, and we look to shift that power dynamics so fishers can set the price for their catch. Integrated catch monitoring system, so helping fishers to collect the data on the species that they catch, so they more effectively understand what they're catching and can monitor the trends. An internal control system, so a sort of electronic system to help fishers manage their businesses more effectively, making sure they're compliant, getting everything electronic, working with us for the fishers co-op there. Implementing fair working conditions. So we 2 things. We understood that there's no guidelines for what fair labor practices are for the small-scale fishery sector. So that was something we sought to introduce. And then also we understood that fishers pay the road accident fund but don't actually get the benefit of it when they're out at sea. So looking at a way that we could introduce a workers' compensation fund. And then the 5th one is introducing a Kogelberg regional fisheries management plan. So just basically, so there are no management plans in any of South Africa's fisheries at the moment. So it was to understand who fishes what, where, so like rights of access, withdrawal, as well as exclusion, who's allowed to fish in certain areas, and just understanding what are the target species, who are vessel owners, which vessels we use, what gear we use, how do we go about resolving conflict, how do we make decisions around certain things, participatory approach. So spelling this all out in one plan. Right, so the last 2 are then also an inclusive research and monitoring program. So at the moment, small-scale fishers and the community are quite alienated from the gathering of scientific data and research, right? And we see that often they're at loggerheads on some of the decisions that's taken by scientists. So this project was sought to involve fishers and the community in the gathering of scientific data, sort of get them to better understand how decisions are reached, and then implementation of an anti-IUU strategy. So as I said, this area is quite rife with illegal fishing and poaching, so trying to see how we can address that. Okay, so we found a bit of challenges in implementing those 7 projects, and we again shifted tack about 2018, 2019. So instead of focusing predominantly on fisheries and fisheries improvement, we sought to look broader at the community and look at community development and community upliftment in order to reach our conservation goals. Right, so the overall goal was then to, if we can provide more livelihoods, reduce hunger, poverty, and those social ills, that fishers would then not have to extract marine resources as much as they have in the past. So these are 4 ways that WWF has shifted to try and make its work more participatory, more inclusive. So addressing hunger and food security, building climate resilience within small-scale fishers, undertaking responsible fisheries training, and amending our SASSI methodology. So I'm going to speak to all 4 of those now. So the first project that we're running in Kogelberg at the moment, our site that I showed earlier, is working quite closely with Abalobi, NGO that's provided various applications to assist small-scale fishers, and this one is looking at capturing data. So on here they're able to log all their catch data. They also can draw expense reports to see how much they've spent, what is their cost, and the idea is that they can then come up with monthly records of what they've caught, how much they've spent, and using that, hopefully, over time can access credit to show like a stable income, stable expenses, and access those type of credit. Yeah. The second one is the restaurant value chain. So working again with Abalobi to roll out the marketplace application. And this was trying to link small-scale fishers directly with high-end restaurants in the Kogelberg region. This is Chef Louis from the Arabella Hotel in Claremont, and we were successfully able to link fishers on a few occasions where they were selling Hottentot straight to the restaurant. So before, where they were getting about 30 Rand for, they call it a bunch of Hottentot, they were now able to increase that by about 300%, and so they were getting a lot more value for their catch. community-driven research. So this was in the attempt to bridge the gap between scientists and community. We undertook this project, which is called Baited Remote Underwater Video Cameras. Basically, together with fishers, we dumped these video cameras in and outside a marine protected area in the region, and they were able to see, what kind of fish there are, abundance, species identification, and through that they became empowered. They began to understand what are the resources within their waters. And we've already seen positive results where we have small-scale fishers challenging DAF scientists on what is in their area. Right, so that was the goal, to kind of stimulate this co-management of the area based on an understanding of what exists there. Right, so these projects that from here on we've not yet commenced but have secured funding to do so. So we are implementing, and we've implemented till 2023. So this one is to aim at creating like a sustainable livelihood with 15 youth from the community. So it's called Marine and Coastal Community Monitoring. The aim was to get 15 youth, right, provide them with the opportunity to enter into Nelson Mandela University, where they can study to be a fisheries inspector. And we've then had a partnership with Cape Nature and DAF and the local economic development department, where they will then become employable once they've completed this. So we've begun with that. We've realized most of them have got to do their senior certificate or matric over in order to qualify to enter Nelson Mandela University. So we're busy setting up 3 classes for next year, and post that we hope to take 15 people through to Nelson Mandela University and subsequent 2023 be employed in the area. This will also contribute to better understanding of the environment, because it's part study and part work employment, and the work employment will be the monitoring of environmental conditions. Okay, so a couple more ecotourism promotions. So again, we're training a select number of community members to become accredited ecotourists. And we've also got funding to launch a couple of big tourism activities. So we're thinking along the lines of like Claremont Fish Market or a fresh goods market, or something that really appeals to bring everyone to the region. And again, the idea is to have thriving small businesses in the communities. That's going to continue once the funding has ended. So we're hoping to set them up, have them registered, access external funding, and once we leave them, they're sustainable. Same with environmental education. We're going to train up a few community members to be qualified environmental educators, put together a program where they speak to schools, municipalities, broader communities, and try and make that into a sustainable business. General capacity building is we're going to run business acumen skills, as well as get mentoring from established business people to give us the best opportunity of having these small businesses survive. And then cooperative training. So to the co-ops that are going to be formed by DAF, hopefully in the new year, there should be 2 in our region, to support cooperative training of those, but also new cooperatives that we're going to establish based on our other business initiatives. So the last one under this heading is that we're going to undertake a feasibility study in Ecological to look at what are the viabilities of introducing sustainable supplementary alternative livelihoods. So we're looking at post-harvest fish processing, aquaculture, abalone ranching is quite a topical one that's come up, but we want to introduce things that are feasible, that the communities want. So this is quite a participatory approach. Things that meet social capital, human capital, environmental capital that are accessible and in possession within the communities. So these are a few that we've come up with, but again, it's with collaboration with the community and driven, hopefully, bottom up. The second one is building climate resilience, and this is also a project that we're undertaking in collaboration with Abelobi and the Council for Scientific Industrial Research, the CSIR. So we're going to run this in Hamburg, in the Eastern Cape, as well as Kogelberg, and our selection of Hamburg as a site is similar reasons for that of Kogelberg: unemployment, dependency on marine resources for livelihoods. So here we're implementing a feasibility study to identify ecosystem-based adaptation and tourism activities. So essentially activities that create resilience within the environment as well as within the communities. And we're hoping to undertake about 3 to 4 major ones in both communities. And then again, we'll hopefully introduce household aquaponic systems, again based on feasibility studies, but from what we've seen, it looks like it's possibly feasible and could contribute to food security as well as an alternative livelihood, depending on how the community would like to afford it. And then the mobile phone applications like Abelobi, as well as our draft project for alternative community research-based project in the area. For responsible fishing, we've come up with a one-day interactive course, and we've tried to reach as many small-scale fishing communities that we can. So we basically talk about the impacts of fishing like bycatch, overfishing, as well as plastics, climate change, all of these in a one-day session. It's quite short, and the impact you're going to leave communities with is, we can't glamorize it as such, but we have found that we've seen some successes where fishers are not disposing of plastics in the ocean or cigarette butts, and you'll be surprised how many fishers smoke, so that's quite a big positive. We've been all around the coastline from the Northern Cape to close to where Sabella's from, Bangladesh, Mozambique, and it's been well received generally. That's some pictures of our training course. And then the last one was also working closely with Abelobi, is trying to amend the SASSI methodology and process to be more inclusive of small-scale fishers. So we added criteria to include human dimensions, so looking at forced labor, child labor, equity within the supply chain, hunger and food security. So at the moment it's a draft, but the idea is to incorporate human dimensions, so you're assessing sustainability of a resource as well as its impact on communities. And when you give a green listing, it's considering sustainability in a more holistic manner and not just ecological sustainability. So we've initiated it, but it's still a process that's going to be rolled out long term. And then the other one is including small-scale fishers in our assessments. As I said, like, we have a 60-day comment period, but that's not effective when you're assessing a species that small-scale fishers depend on, and you give them no chance to provide their input realistically. So for species that are relevant to certain fishers, we will go to those communities, engage them in the assessment, access local ecological knowledge, and look at how we come up with a rating together. Essentially, that's the long-term vision. We're not there yet, but that's the long-term vision. So we understand so that some of these projects we introduce might cause a bit of further stratification within these communities. That is always the case, and we note the risk of working with the elites within communities or people that are the most articulate or the loudest. That's why we try to work with the more vulnerable members like youth, like women, so we try and get the benefits of our projects to reach further, more sustainable in communities, but all the bigger reach as well.